The Reaper on the Highway, a complete story. That night on a highway in Mexico, I shook hands with a man. His hand was nothing but bone. When he removed his helmet, I saw two empty sockets where his eyes should have been staring straight through me into the very core of my soul. He said, "I have already taken 3. 4 more to go. Count to 10. And I counted. 1, 2, 3. Do you want to know what happened at 10? I will tell you. But first, you need to understand how I ended up standing in the middle of a highway at 2 in the morning, surrounded by twisted metal and dead bodies face to face with death himself. My name is Rodrigo Salazar. I am 32 years old now, but I was 29 when this happened. 3 years have passed since that night in November 2019, and I still cannot drive alone after 10 at night. My therapist says it is trauma. My priest says it is a blessing that I survived. My grandmother, before she passed last year, said I was touched by La Muerte and that I should light a candle every night to thank the saints for sparing me. I do not know which one of them is right, maybe all of them, maybe none. What I know for certain is that everything I am about to tell you is true, and when I finish, you will never look at a lonely highway the same way again. It was a Saturday night, November 2nd. The day after Dia de los Muertos. I remember this detail because later I would wonder if it was coincidence or something more. In Mexico, we celebrate the dead. We build altars, we bake bread, we tell stories of those who have passed. We do not fear death the way others do. We invite it to our tables, we dance with its skeleton figure at festivals, we paint our faces like skulls, and laugh at the thing that will one day claim us all. But that night I learned that there is a difference between celebrating death and meeting it in person. I was driving home from Guadalajara, heading toward Morelia to visit my mother. The trip usually takes about 3 hours if the traffic cooperates, longer if it does not. I had stayed late at work finishing a project that could not wait until Monday, and by the time I left the city, the sun had already set. I should have stayed in Guadalajara and driven the next morning. My mother would have understood, she always does, but I had promised her I would be there for breakfast. She makes the best chilaquiles in all of Morelia, and she had been preparing them since the day before. I did not want to disappoint her. That decision nearly killed me, or maybe it saved my life. Even now, I'm not sure which. I drove a silver Chevrolet Spark, a 2015 model that I had bought used 2 years earlier. I know what you're thinking. A Spark is not exactly an impressive car. It is small, underpowered struggles to maintain speed on highways and looks like a toy next to the trucks and SUVs that dominate Mexican roads. But it was what I could afford, and it was reliable. It got me from point A to point B without complaints, and that was all I needed. Or so I thought. I merged onto Highway 15D around 9 in the evening. The night had already swallowed the landscape, leaving nothing but the yellow glow of my headlights cutting through the darkness ahead. The highway stretched out before me like a black ribbon, unspooling into infinity, bordered by occasional lampposts that cast pale circles of light at intervals of 200 or 300 meters. Between them there was only darkness. Pure, absolute darkness, the kind that makes you feel like you are the last person alive on Earth. The temperature had dropped significantly. November nights in the Mexican highlands can get cold, much colder than people expect. My dashboard thermometer showed 12 degrees Celsius, and I could see my breath fogging slightly when I exhaled. I turned up the heater, but the spark system was never particularly powerful, and the warmth it provided was barely enough to keep the chill at bay. I cracked my window open just a sliver to let fresh air circulate and immediately regretted it. The wind that slipped through carried the smell of dry grass and distant cattle mixed with the faint chemical odor of asphalt and exhaust. I turned on the radio to keep myself company. A bolero was playing one of those old romantic songs my father used to listen to when I was a child. The singer's voice was smooth and melancholic, singing about lost love and broken promises. And for a moment I felt a strange nostalgia wash over me. It was the kind of music that makes you think about the past, about people you have lost, about roads not taken. Fitting, I suppose, for the night after Dia de los Muertos. Traffic was sparse. Every few minutes a truck would rumble past in the opposite direction, its headlights blinding me momentarily before disappearing into the night. Occasionally I would pass a slower vehicle, a sedan or an old pickup, and then it would be just me and the road again. The solitude was both comforting and unsettling. I told myself I enjoyed the quiet, the peace of driving alone without anyone to disturb my thoughts, but somewhere deep down in that primitive part of the brain that still remembers what it was like to be prey, I felt uneasy. Something about that night felt wrong. I could not explain it then, and I struggled to explain it now. It was not any single thing. It was everything together. The way the darkness seemed thicker than usual, the way the wind carried sounds that I could not identify, the way my headlights seemed to struggle against the night as if the darkness was pushing back. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I told myself it was just fatigue, just the lateness of the hour, just my imagination playing tricks on me. The human mind is always looking for patterns, always trying to find meaning in randomness. That was all this was, random unease, nothing more. I was wrong. Around 10:15, I was passing through a stretch of highway between La Piedad and Zamora. This section of the road is particularly desolate, bordered on both sides by dry grasslands and the occasional small farm. The lamp posts were fewer and farther between here, and fog had begun to form in the lower areas, drifting across the road in ghostly wisps that my headlights turned into silver curtains. I slowed down slightly, not wanting to take any chances. Visibility was already poor, and the last thing I needed was to hit something I did not see coming. That was when I first saw them. In my rear-view mirror, a pair of headlights appeared moving fast, very fast. They were gaining on me with alarming speed, weaving between the few other vehicles on the road, as if they were playing some kind of game. Within seconds, the lights were close enough for me to make out the shape of the vehicle behind them. It was an Audi Q7 black, and gleaming, the kind of luxury SUV that cost more than I would make in 5 years. Even in the darkness, I could tell it was well maintained, the chrome trim glinting in the light of the passing lampposts. The Audi roared past me close enough that I could feel the displaced air shake my little spark. For a brief moment I had a clear view of the interior, illuminated by the blue glow of the dashboard and the flickering light of phone screens. The car was packed with people. Young people. 5, maybe 6 of them, ranging in age from their late teens to early 20s. Some were sitting normally, but others were leaning out of open windows, their arms waving in the air bottles and cans clutched in their fists. The bass of electronic music thumped from the Audi's speakers, loud enough to drown out my radio even from outside. Someone screamed something unintelligible, and the sound was swallowed by laughter. They were drunk, obviously catastrophically drunk. The driver was swerving slightly, not enough to lose control, but enough to tell me that his reflexes were not what they should be. They'd come from a party somewhere, probably a late celebration of Halloween or a gathering after Dia de los Muertos, and now they were tearing down the highway like they owned it. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Drunk drivers are among the most dangerous things on any road, and these kids were not just drunk, they were reckless, aggressive, and clearly convinced of their own invincibility. I had seen their type before. Rich kids who had never been told no, who believed that money and youth made them immune to consequences. They would speed, they would swerve, they would play chicken with other vehicles, and eventually, inevitably, something would go wrong. The only question was whether they would kill only themselves or take innocent people with them. I slowed down, letting them pull ahead. Better to let them get far away from me. Whatever happened to them was not my problem, and I had no desire to be anywhere near them when their luck ran out. The Audi's taillights shrank in the distance, 2 red dots fading into the fog. For a few minutes I thought that was the end of it. They were gone, racing toward their destination or their doom, and I would never see them again. But the universe, it seems, had other plans. 5 minutes later, I noticed that the red dots had stopped shrinking. They were still there at roughly the same distance from me, neither closer nor farther. At first, I thought I was catching up to them because they had slowed down. Maybe they had realized how dangerous they were being. Maybe they had decided to take it easy, but as I watched, I saw the brake lights flash, and then the Audi began to drift back toward me, slowing until it was pacing alongside. They were playing a game, a different game now. They were blocking other cars, cutting them off when they tried to pass, swerving into their lanes just to watch them brake and swerve. I saw them do it to a pickup truck ahead of me, cutting across its nose so sharply that the truck had to slam its brakes and veer onto the shoulder to avoid a collision. The people in the Audi howled with laughter, waving their bottles in triumph. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and kept my eyes forward. Do not make eye contact. Do not give them a reason to notice you. Just keep driving. Just keep your head down. Maybe they will get bored. Maybe they will move on. They did not move on. The Audi slowed until it was directly beside me. I could see them clearly now, their faces lit by the glow of their phones and the dashboard. There were 5 of them, I realized, not 6. 3 boys and 2 girls. The driver was a young man with slicked back hair and a smug expression, the kind of face that had never known hardship or consequence. The passenger seat held another boy, thinner, with a wispy mustache and glassy eyes. In the back were the 2 girls and a 3rd boy, all of them leaning toward the windows, staring at me. Someone called out. A male voice, slurred and mocking. "Hey, nice toy car. What is that, a shopping cart with wheels?" Laughter erupted from the Audi. I kept my eyes forward. Do not engage. Do not respond. Just keep driving. "Hey, I am talking to you. Are you deaf or just stupid?" I said nothing. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. My heart was beating faster than it should have been. I told myself there was nothing to be afraid of. They were just drunk kids being obnoxious. They would get bored eventually. They always did. "Valentina, give him something to remember us by." The name cut through the noise. Valentina. I would remember that name later when I found her dying on the asphalt. But in that moment, it meant nothing to me. It was just a name, just another sound in a night full of sounds that I wanted to forget. I saw movement in the back seat of the Audi, a girl, dark hair, whipping in the wind, leaning out of the window. She was wearing a crop top and heavy makeup, and even in the dim light I could see her smile. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who enjoys causing pain. In her hand she held a beer can. I did not have time to react. The can flew through the air, spinning end over end, catching the light from my headlights for a fraction of a second before it slammed into my windshield. The impact was like a gunshot. The glass did not shatter, but a spiderweb of cracks exploded from the point of impact, spreading across the right side of my field of vision. Beer sprayed across the windshield, mixing with the fog to create a smeared, distorted view of the road ahead. The smell hit me immediately. Cheap alcohol and chemicals filling the cabin of my car. I jerked the wheel instinctively, and for one terrifying moment I felt the Spark's tires lose their grip on the asphalt. The car swayed, tilting, threatening to spin. I yanked the wheel back the other way, overcorrecting, and the Spark fishtailed before finally stabilizing. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My hands were shaking. For a second, maybe 2, I had been certain I was going to crash. I had felt death reaching for me, its cold fingers brushing against my spine and then pulling back at the last moment. Not yet. Not this time. The Audi was already pulling away the occupants, laughing and cheering, Valentina still hanging out of the window with her arms raised in victory. I watched them disappear into the fog ahead, their tail lights fading like the eyes of a predator retreating into the darkness. I pulled over to the shoulder, my whole body trembling. The cracked windshield stared back at me, a permanent reminder of what had just happened. The smell of beer was overwhelming, and I had to roll down all the windows just to breathe. They are just drunk kids, I told myself. Just stupid, reckless drunk kids. They are gone now. It is over. But it was not over. It was just beginning. As I sat there trying to calm my nerves, I noticed something in my rearview mirror, a single light approaching from behind. Not two lights like a car, just one, a motorcycle. It came closer and I could make out its shape, a Harley Davidson, one of those classic choppers with the high handlebars and the long seat. The engine made that distinctive sound, that deep rhythmic thump that Harley riders love. Thum, thum, thum. The rider was dressed entirely in black. Black leather jacket, black pants, black boots, black helmet with a visor so dark I could not see through it. There was no reflective material anywhere on him, nothing to catch the light. He was like a shadow, given form, a piece of the night that had decided to take shape and ride a motorcycle. The Harley passed me without slowing down. As it went by, I had the strangest feeling that the rider was looking at me, even though I could not see his face. It was just a feeling, nothing concrete, nothing I could explain. But it was there, cold and certain, like someone walking over my grave. Probably just another driver, I told myself. Probably just someone in a hurry trying to get home. But as I watched the Harley's single taillight disappear into the fog, heading in the same direction the Audi had gone, I could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The rider had not been breathing. In the cold night air, I should have seen vapor coming from his helmet, from the vents, from somewhere. Everyone breathes. Everyone leaves traces. But there had been nothing. No fog of breath, no sign of life, just darkness, and the sound of an engine fading into the night. Probably just my imagination, I told myself. Probably just the stress of what happened with those kids. I started the car and pulled back onto the highway. 15 minutes later, I would find out how wrong I was. The accident was waiting for me like a predator crouched in the darkness. I saw the lights first, not the steady glow of headlights or the rhythmic flash of turn signals, but something chaotic, something wrong. It was the kind of light that comes from twisted metal, catching and reflecting at unnatural angles, the kind of light that tells you before you even get close that something terrible has happened. The fog made it worse, scattering the reflections into a hazy, pulsing glow that seemed to hover above the highway like a dying star. My foot moved to the brake pedal instinctively, and the spark began to slow. Part of me wanted to turn around to find another route, to pretend I had never seen anything. But the highway stretched empty behind me, and the next exit was kilometers away. Besides, there might be survivors. There might be people who needed help. I could not just drive past and leave them to die in the darkness. As I got closer, the shape of the wreckage began to emerge from the fog. At first, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. It looked like a sculpture, some abstract art installation made of black metal and shattered glass sprawled across both lanes of the highway. Then my headlights caught the logo on what remained of the rear bumper, 4 interlocking rings, and I understood. The Audi Q7 that had passed me 20 minutes ago, full of drunk kids and loud music and arrogant laughter. The Audi that had nearly killed me with a thrown beer can. It was unrecognizable now, transformed from a luxury vehicle into a monument of destruction. The car had rolled multiple times, that much was clear from the long gouges in the asphalt, and the trail of debris that stretched back at least 50 meters. The roof had been crushed, almost flat, pressed down until it nearly touched the seats. The doors had been torn off, one of them lying in the grass on the shoulder, another nowhere to be seen. The front end was crumpled like paper, the engine block shoved backward into what had once been the passenger compartment. I stopped my car about 50 meters from the wreckage and turned off the engine. For a long moment I just sat there, my hands still gripping the steering wheel, my breath fogging in the cold air. The smell hit me even before I opened the door, gasoline, sharp and chemical mixing with the acrid stench of burning rubber and hot metal. And underneath it something else, something organic, something that made my stomach turn. Blood. The smell of blood. I forced myself to open the door and step out. The cold hit me immediately, cutting through my jacket like it was not there. The wind had picked up, carrying the smell of the wreck directly toward me, and I had to fight the urge to gag. My legs felt weak, unsteady, like they belonged to someone else. But I made the move one step at a time toward the twisted mass of metal that had once been a car. The first body I found was about 10 meters from the main wreckage. He was lying face down on the asphalt, his right arm stretched out in front of him, as if he had been reaching for something when he died. His left arm was bent at an angle that arms are not supposed to bend, the bone clearly broken in at least 2 places. He was young, maybe 19 or 20, wearing a designer shirt that was now soaked dark with blood. I knelt beside him, my hands trembling, and pressed 2 fingers to his neck. Nothing. No pulse. His skin was cold. I stood up, my head swimming. This was the first time I had ever touched a dead body. In movies, they always make it look so simple, so clean, but there is nothing clean about death. There is only the absence of everything that makes a person alive and the terrible stillness that remains. The second body was closer to the car. A girl young, probably 18 at most. She was lying on her back, her eyes open and staring at the night sky, but seeing nothing. Her dark hair was spread around her head like a halo matted with blood from a wound I could not see. One of her shoes was missing. I do not know why I noticed that detail, but I did. One shoe on one shoe gone, probably somewhere in the wreckage or thrown into the grass during the crash. Such a small thing, such a human thing, and now she would never wear shoes again. I did not check her pulse. I did not need to. Her eyes told me everything. The driver was still in the car, or what was left of it. He was hanging from his seatbelt, the only one of them who had been wearing one, for all the good it did him. The impact had crushed the steering column into his chest, and his head hung at an angle that made it clear his neck had snapped. I could see his face frozen in an expression of surprise, as if death had come so quickly he had not even had time to be afraid. The slicked-back hair I had noticed earlier was now matted with blood and glass, and his eyes were half open, staring at nothing. I turned away and vomited. When my stomach was empty and the heaving had stopped, I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and forced myself to continue. There had been 5 people in that car, maybe 6. I had to check. I had to know. Behind the car, I found one more. A boy curled into a fetal position, blood pooling around his head from wounds I could not identify in the darkness. He was not moving. He would never move again. 4 bodies. But I remembered seeing 5 people in the car. Had I miscounted? Or was there someone else out here somewhere in the darkness still alive? That was when I heard it. A voice. Weak, broken, barely more than a whisper, but unmistakably human. Help, please. Someone help me. It was coming from the other side of the wreckage, from a patch of darkness that my headlights did not reach. I scrambled around the twisted metal, my heart suddenly pounding with desperate hope. Someone was alive. Someone had survived. If I could find them, if I could get help, maybe they could be saved. I found her lying about 15 meters from the car in the grass, just off the shoulder of the highway. She had been thrown clear during one of the rolls, landing far enough from the main wreckage to avoid being crushed. In the dim light, I could make out her dark hair, her torn crop top, her face streaked with blood and tears. Valentina, the girl who had thrown the beer can at my windshield. She was trying to crawl, dragging herself forward with her arms, her legs trailing uselessly behind her. When she saw me approaching, she reached out with one hand, her fingers grasping at the air. "Please," she whispered, "please help me. I cannot feel my legs. I cannot move them. Please." I knelt beside her, my mind racing. Her back was injured, that much was obvious. The way her legs were not responding, the way she could only drag herself with her arms, it all pointed to spinal damage. I knew I should not move. Her knew that any wrong movement could make things worse, but I also knew she needed help immediately. "Stay still," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my hands were shaking. "Do not move. I'm going to call for help." I pulled out my phone and looked at the screen. No signal. Of course there was no signal. This was the middle of nowhere, a stretch of empty highway between 2 cities surrounded by nothing but grassland and farms. Cell coverage out here was spotty at best, non-existent at worst. I need to drive to find signal, I told her. I will come back, I promise. Just stay still and... Her hand shot out and grabbed my sleeve with surprising strength. Do not leave me. She begged, her voice cracking. Please do not go. I do not want to die alone, please. I looked at her face, at the terror in her eyes, at the tears cutting tracks through the blood on her cheeks. 20 minutes ago, she had been laughing while her friends nearly killed me. 20 minutes ago, she had thrown a beer can at my car and cheered when it hit. But now she was just a scared girl, barely an adult, lying broken on the side of a highway in the middle of the night, begging a stranger not to leave her to die. I did not leave. I could not. Whatever she had done, whatever her friends had done, she did not deserve to die alone in the dark. Okay, I said, kneeling beside her. Okay, I will stay. She clutched my sleeve like it was the only thing keeping her attached to the world of the living. Her breathing was ragged, shallow, and I could see the effort it took her to form words. I am sorry, she whispered. The beer can, I am sorry. We were just having fun. We did not mean to. We did not think. It is okay, I said, even though it was not. Just try to stay calm. We will figure this out. My friends? She said, her eyes searching the darkness. Where are my friends? Are they okay as Miguel, okay as Andrea? Do not worry about that right now, I said quickly, not wanting to tell her what I had seen. Just focus on breathing. Help will come. But even as I said the words, I did not believe them. No one knew we were here. No other cars had passed since I arrived. The highway was empty, the night was dark, and somewhere in the distance I could hear something that made my blood freeze. The sound of an engine. A motorcycle engine. Thum, thum, thum. It was coming from ahead, not behind, from the direction the Audi had been traveling, as if someone had been waiting out there in the darkness, knowing this would happen. I looked up and saw a single headlight approaching through the fog. Someone is coming, I told Valentina, trying to sound reassuring. The sea help is on the way. But even as I spoke, something cold settled in my chest. The motorcycle was not moving like someone rushing to help. It was moving slowly, deliberately, like a predator that knew its prey could not escape. The single headlight cut through the fog like an eye searching, finding, focusing on the wreckage. The Harley-Davidson stopped about 10 meters away. The engine died, but the rider did not dismount immediately. He just sat there, a black silhouette against the faint glow of the fog, completely motionless. I could not see his face through the dark visor of his helmet. I could not see anything at all. He was like a hole cut in the fabric of the night, a place where light and life simply ceased to exist. Valentina's grip on my sleeve tightened. "Who is that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I did not answer. I did not have an answer. The rider finally dismounted, swinging his leg over the seat with a fluid motion that seemed almost inhuman in its grace. His boots touched the asphalt without a sound. No crunch of gravel, no scuff of leather on pavement, just silence. He began walking toward us, each step measured and deliberate, and with each step the temperature seemed to drop a little more. I became aware of details that should have been impossible to notice in the darkness. The silver studs on his leather jacket glinting faintly in the reflected light of my headlights. The way his black gloves seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. The complete absence of any fog from his breath, even though the air was cold enough that I could see my own breath clearly. He was not breathing. Or if he was breathing something other than air. I stood up, placing myself between the approaching figure and Valentina. "Hey!" I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need help here." "There's been an accident. Do you have a phone? Can you call an ambulance?" The rider did not respond. He did not even slow down. He just kept walking that same measured pace, as if my words meant nothing to him, as if I meant nothing to him. I raised my hand. "Stop, please. Can you hear me? We need—" He raised his own hand, a single gesture that somehow conveyed absolute authority, and I found myself falling silent. It was not a choice. It was not fear. It was something deeper, something instinctive, like a rabbit freezing when it senses a hawk overhead. The rider walked past me without a glance, as if I was not there at all, and stopped in front of Valentina. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with terror. Some part of her, some ancient animal instinct, recognized what I was only beginning to understand. This was not a man. This was not help. This was something else entirely. "I am sorry," she whispered the words, tumbling out in a desperate flood. "I am sorry for whatever we did. Please, we were just having fun. We did not mean to hurt anyone. Please, I do not want to die. Please, I am only 18. Please." The rider tilted his head slightly as if considering her words. When he spoke, his voice was like nothing I had ever heard. It was not loud, but it carried echoing in the silence of the night, as if it came from very far away. It was cold, colder than the air around us, and there was something in it that made me think of empty rooms and abandoned places, and the silence at the bottom of very deep wells. "It is not your choice," he said. 3 words, just 3 words, but they carried the weight of absolute certainty, of a verdict already rendered, of a sentence already passed. Valentina began to cry. Not the quiet tears of before, but great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. "Please," she kept saying over and over. "Please, please, please." The rider knelt beside her. Slowly, almost gently, he reached out and placed one gloved hand on her forehead. It was the gesture of a father comforting a sick child, tender and intimate and utterly terrifying in its context. Valentina's eyes went wide. Her body jerked once, a full-body spasm that arced her back off the ground. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. And then, as quickly as it had begun, it was over. She went limp, settling back onto the grass like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Her eyes were still open, but the light behind them was gone. She was dead. I stumbled backward, my legs suddenly weak, my heart hammering against my ribs. "What did you do?" I heard myself say, my voice strange and distant in my own ears. "What did you... Who are you? What are you..." The rider stood and turned to face me. In the faint light from my car's headlights, I could see myself reflected in the dark visor of his helmet. I looked small, fragile, terrified. "You already know," he said. And the terrible thing was, he was right. I did know. Some part of me had known since the moment I saw him on the highway, since the moment I noticed the absence of breath from his helmet, since the moment I felt that cold certainty settle into my chest. In Mexico, we do not fear death the way others do. We celebrate it, we dance with it, we paint our faces in its image. But we also know its name. We know its many forms. We know that it walks among us patient and inevitable, waiting for the moment when our time has come. La Muerte, the death. El Segador, the reaper. He stood before me now, dressed in black leather and riding a Harley-Davidson, and he was more real than any altar or any skull-faced costume or any story told by grandmothers to frighten children into obedience. "Why?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "Why did you show yourself to me? Why let me see this?" He was silent for a long moment. Then he reached up and began to remove his helmet. The movement was slow, deliberate, as if he was giving me time to look away if I chose to. I should have looked away. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to close my eyes, to turn my head, to run. But I could not. I was frozen in place, held there by something stronger than fear, something that felt almost like compulsion. The helmet came off. Underneath was the face of a man, just a man. Middle age, perhaps 40 or 50, with weathered skin and a short beard and strong, angular features. He looked like a rancher, like a truck driver, like any of 1,000 men you might pass on the street without a second glance. Ordinary, human, except for his eyes. Where his eyes should have been, there was nothing. No eyeballs, no eyelids, no sockets filled with shadow, just emptiness. Absolute, perfect, endless emptiness. It was like looking into 2 holes cut in the fabric of reality, 2 windows into a void so complete that light itself refused to enter. They were not black. Black is a color. These were the absence of color, the absence of everything, the visual equivalent of silence and stillness and the space between heartbeats, and yet somehow I knew he could see me. He was looking at me, looking through me, looking into me, seeing things I did not even know were there to be seen. "You came at the right time," he said, his voice still carrying that strange echo. "To the right place. This was not an accident. Nothing is an accident." "I do not understand," I said, and my voice sounded like a stranger's. "You will." He extended his hand toward me, palm up, as if offering a handshake. "Take my hand." I stared at the gloved hand, at the black leather that seemed to drink in the light. "Why?" "Because you have seen what is not meant for the living to see. Because you have witnessed the moment between life and death, and that is not something that can be undone. You are part of this now, whether you choose to be or not." "I do not want to be part of anything. I just want to go home. I just want to forget all of this." "You will not forget." It was not a threat. It was not a warning. It was simply a statement of fact as certain as gravity. "But if you take my hand, you will understand. And understanding is the only mercy I can offer." I looked at his hand. I looked at the empty spaces where his eyes should have been. I looked at Valentina's body lying still in the grass, and at the wreckage of the Audi, and at the shapes of the other bodies scattered across the highway. I should have run. I should have gotten in my car and driven away as fast as that little spark could carry me. I should have done anything other than what I did. But something in me, some part that I did not know existed until that moment, reached out and took his hand. The glove was soft leather, worn smooth by use. But underneath, where I expected to feel flesh and bone, and the warmth of living tissue, there was only bone. Hard, smooth, cold bone. It was like shaking hands with a skeleton, with a corpse, with something that had never been alive in any sense that mattered. And then I saw. The world dissolved around me, replaced by something else. A vision, a memory, a glimpse of something beyond the boundaries of normal perception. I saw the Audi speeding down the highway, the music thumping, the passengers laughing and drinking and shouting into the night. I saw the driver, Miguel, his eyes glazed with alcohol and something else pills. Maybe his hands unsteady on the wheel. I saw Valentina leaning out the window, the beer can in her hand, the laughter on her face as she threw it at my windshield. I saw the Harley following them from Guadalajara, from the party they had left, from the moment Miguel had decided to drive, despite being too drunk to walk straight. Patient, inevitable, already knowing how this would end. I saw the curve in the road, gentle, barely a curve at all. I saw Miguel's delayed reaction, the wheel turning too late, too sharp. I saw the Audi leave the pavement, clip the guardrail, become airborne. I saw it roll once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, bodies flying out through shattered windows, metal screaming against asphalt. I saw the Reaper arrive at the wreckage before the car had even stopped moving. I saw him walk among the bodies, touching foreheads, taking what was his, 1, 2, 3. And then Valentina, still alive when I found her, but already marked, already claimed. She had been dying from the moment the car left the road. Her spine was severed, her internal organs failing. Even if an ambulance had been waiting on the shoulder, she would not have survived. The Reaper had simply collected what was already his, 4 souls, 4 from this car. But the vision showed me something else. A 5th figure lying in the grass near the shoulder, farther from the wreckage than the others. Unconscious, badly injured, but still breathing, still alive, not yet taken. The vision ended, and I was back on the highway, my hand still clasped in the Reaper's grip. I pulled away, stumbling backward, my head spinning. 4, I gasped. "You said 4, but I only counted 4 bodies. The 3 by the car and Valentina. Where is the 5th? 3 died in the crash," the Reaper said, his voice patient, almost gentle. "Valentina was already dying when you found her. I simply eased her passage. The 4th soul has not yet been claimed. The 5th person in the car, the one who is still alive, where is he?" The Reaper tilted his head, that same considering gesture I'd seen before. Then he pointed toward the far side of the highway, toward a patch of darkness beyond the reach of my headlights. "He was thrown far from the car. He has been lying there since the crash, unconscious, unseen. His injuries are severe but survivable. He might have lived if circumstances were different. Then I can save him. I can— No. The Reaper's voice stopped me cold. His time has come, not by my hand, but by fate's design. What happens next was written long before tonight. What do you mean, what happens next? The Reaper looked past me down the highway toward the direction I had come from. I turned to follow his gaze, and in the distance I saw headlights, bright headlights high off the ground, the kind of headlights that belong to a large truck. "Count to 10, the Reaper said. Before I could respond, he was moving, walking back toward his motorcycle with that same measured, unhurried pace. He mounted the Harley, replaced his helmet, and started the engine. The sound filled the night, that familiar rhythm, thum, thum, thum. "Wait!" I shouted, running toward him. "What do you mean, count to 10? What happens at 10? You cannot just leave. You have to—" The Harley's engine roared and the Reaper pulled away. But he did not drive down the highway. He simply vanished. One moment he was there, the single tail light cutting through the fog, and the next moment there was nothing. No light, no sound, no sign that he had ever existed at all. I stood there frozen, my mind refusing to process what I had just witnessed. Then I heard the truck horn long and loud and desperate, and I understood. The truck was coming, and the fifth survivor was lying unconscious in its path. I ran. I ran faster than I have ever run in my life. The truck's headlights were growing larger with each passing second, twin suns bearing down on the wreckage scattered across the highway. The horn was blaring continuously now, a desperate wail that cut through the night like a scream. The driver had seen the accident. He was trying to stop. But a fully loaded semi-trailer does not stop on command. Physics does not care about good intentions or desperate hopes. 1. My feet pounded against the asphalt. 2. The fog parted around me as I ran. 3. I could hear the truck's brakes now, a high-pitched squeal of metal on metal. 4. The driver was standing on the brake pedal with everything he had. 5. There. A shape in the grass, maybe 20 meters ahead. 6. The truck was close now, close enough that I could feel the vibration through my shoes. 7. I was not going to make it. The math was brutal. 8. But I kept running anyway. 9. I reached the survivor and threw myself down beside him. He was young, maybe 21, with curly hair matted with blood. His eyes were closed, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Alive. I grabbed him under the arms and pulled. He was heavy, dead weight that refused to cooperate. My feet slipped on the wet grass. We moved maybe half a meter. Not enough. 10. The truck hit the wreckage of the Audi. The sound was indescribable. Metal screamed against metal. Glass exploded. The ground shook like an earthquake. A shock wave of displaced air hit me like a physical blow, knocking me backward onto the grass. I lay there for a moment, stunned, my ears ringing. Then my vision cleared, and I saw what had happened. The truck had plowed through the wreckage, scattering debris across both lanes and into the grass on either side. The truck itself had finally stopped, jackknifed across the road, smoke rising from its front wheels. And beside me, the survivor I had tried to save was still lying in the grass. But something was different now. A piece of metal, a twisted shard from the Audi, was protruding from his chest. The truck's impact had sent debris flying in all directions, and this fragment had traveled in a high arc before coming down directly on top of him. He was dead. The metal had killed him instantly. 4 souls. The Reaper had said 4. 3 from the crash. Valentina already dying when I found her. And now this young man killed not by the initial accident, but by its aftermath. 4 souls, just as the Reaper had promised. He had known. He had told me to count to 10. He had known exactly what would happen and exactly when it would happen, because it was already written. The 4th soul had never been Valentina alone. It had been this sequence of events, this chain of cause and effect, this terrible arithmetic that only death could calculate. The truck driver emerged from his cab, stumbling toward me, his face white with shock. "Oh my God," he kept saying. "Oh my God, I could not stop. I tried to stop. There was fog and then there was wreckage everywhere and I could not stop." "It is not your fault," I heard myself say. "There was nothing you could have done." But even as I spoke, I was not thinking about the truck driver. I was thinking about the Reaper, about his empty eyes and his bone-cold handshake and the way he had vanished into the fog. I was thinking about the vision he had shown me, the perfect clarity of events that I could not have known, details that would later be confirmed by police reports and news stories. And I was thinking about something else, something I had seen at the very edge of the vision, a flash of images so quick I had barely registered them. A silver Chevrolet Spark, a mountain road, fog rolling across the curves, my car plunging through a guardrail into darkness, and on the edge of the road watching the unmistakable silhouette of the Reaper on his Harley-Davidson. The police arrived 15 minutes later, followed by ambulances that had nothing to do but transport bodies. I gave my statement, told them everything except the Reaper, and was eventually allowed to leave. The drive back to Guadalajara took longer than it should have. I drove slowly, carefully flinching at every motorcycle that appeared in my mirrors. I arrived at my apartment as the sun was rising. I called my mother to tell her I would not be coming for breakfast. I did not explain why. I could not explain why. Then I went to bed and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw the Reaper's empty sockets staring back at me. I heard his voice echoing in the silence. I felt the cold grip of his skeletal hand around mine, and I wondered, was that flash of the future a warning or a prophecy? Could I change what I had seen, or was my fate already sealed, written in death's ledger long before I was born? I did not know. I still do not know. 3 years have passed since that night on the highway. I have changed. I do not drive after dark anymore. I call my mother every week, sometimes more, just to hear her voice. I tell the people I love that I love them even when it feels awkward, even when they look at me strangely. I try to be kinder, more patient, more aware that every person I meet is fighting battles I cannot see, because life is short. I knew that before in the abstract way everyone knows it, but now I know it in my bones. I have shaken hands with the one who ends it, and I understand that every moment is borrowed time. 6 months ago, I was stopped at a red light when a Harley-Davidson pulled up beside me. The rider wore black leather and a dark helmet. My heart stopped. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white. But the light changed and the Harley drove away. Just a normal rider on a normal day. That night I dreamed of him. We stood on an empty highway, fog swirling around us. He removed his helmet and those empty sockets stared into my soul. "You still remember?" he said. "I could never forget." "Good, because one day we will meet again. When it is time, not before, not after, exactly when it is meant to be." He turned and walked into the fog, and I woke up with tears on my face. I do not know if that vision I saw, my car plunging off a mountain road, is my future or just a possibility. I do not know if I can change it or if it is already written. The not knowing used to terrify me. Now it just reminds me to make every day count. I am telling you this story for a reason. You are going to die. I know that sounds harsh, but it is true. Someday, somehow, your life will end. You cannot control when, but you can control how you live until then. You can choose to be reckless, to treat life as worthless, or you can choose to value every moment, to love deeply, to be kind. The choice is yours. It always has been. Last week I was lying in bed when I heard something outside my window. Faint at first, then louder, unmistakable. A motorcycle engine, thump, thump, thump. It stopped right outside my building. Silence stretched for an eternity. Then the engine started again and faded into the night. Maybe it was just a neighbor. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe the Reaper was checking in, making sure I had not forgotten. I do not know which. But when the sound faded, I picked up my phone and called my mother. Because you never know when the countdown will start. So live well, live fully, live as if every day might be your last. because one day it will be. And now I have a question for you. Have you ever had an experience you could not explain? A moment when you felt something watching from the darkness? A night when you heard sounds that should not have been there? Tell me your story. Leave it in the comments below, because we are all traveling the same highway. And somewhere out there, the Reaper is waiting. He has all the time in the world, and sooner or later he will stop for each of us. The only question is, will you be ready? Wait. Do you hear that outside? A motorcycle engine getting closer. Thump, thump, thump.